Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Meter Cute interviews here on Meter and Mayhem. Tonight, I'll be chatting with the co-hosts of the Romanistan podcast, Jezmina Von Thiele and Paulina Stevens. We're going to be talking about their new book, Secrets of Romani Fortune Telling, Divining with Tarot, Palmistry, Tea Leaves, and more. It's out now from Wiser Books. Jezmina is a writer, educator, performer, and fortune teller in their mixed Sinti Romani tradition, whose writing has appeared in Prairie Schooner, Kenyon Review Online, and Narrative Magazine. They also teach classes and workshops on divination, spiritual wellness, and the creative arts. The work of Jezmina's co-author, Paulina Stevens, is rooted in Machwae Romani heritage of fortune telling and healing. She blends ancestral wisdom with modern holistic practices and has expertise in tarot, palmistry, and energy healing, which forms the foundation for her comprehensive wellness coaching. She's also the subject of the LA Times podcast Foretold, which follows Paulina as she navigates the consequences of her decision to leave her arranged marriage and community to redefine her own identity. Are you ready to learn more about Jezmina and Paulina's work? Me too. Let's sit back, relax, and get ready to fall in love.
So I am reading a piece from Secrets of Romani Fortune Telling, and this book is about divining with tarot, palmistry, tea leaves, and more, but we give a lot of cultural context to these practices that most people don't know are associated with Roma. And Roma are a diasporic ethnic group originally from India, but a long time ago, more commonly known as gypsies, but it's technically the racial slur. And Roma have practiced fortune telling, metalworking, performing, basket weaving, horse trading, all kinds of trades that were associated with as survival trades in the face of persecution for a really long time. And this book is both a historical and cultural context to this work of fortune telling. And also, Paulina and I share our own personal stories about what it was like growing up in fortune telling families. And we tell you how to do the work that we do in the most respectful way that we can think of. So, non appropriative, cultural exchange, and cultural education. So this section is from the dream divination part of the book, and it's a little bit of the personal narrative. And we're talking about how to interpret dreams and saying that not all dreams are necessarily prophetic. Some of them are to help you process what's going on around you, which is also really valuable. But sometimes we do have prophetic dreams. So this title is Jezmina's Prophetic Dream. When I was in my first year at college, I had a brand new roommate, Sarah, whom I was already very fond of, even though we had known each other only a couple of weeks. She was an adorable, music-blaring, tennis-playing punk in a dog-collar denim dress and red chucks, and I knew we were going to be great friends, and we still are to this day. I don't sleep well, so I wake up pretty frequently. As such, I have a strong distinction between night dreams and morning dreams, and I've noticed that most of my spiritual healing or processing dreams come at night, and most of my prophetic dreams come in the early morning. One morning, I dreamed that Sarah was driving her car at the time, a sporty red 93 Subaru SVX that she called Back to the Future because it looked like the DeLorean. In the dream, I was like a spirit hovering over her shoulder, and I saw the lights on her dashboard all light up like a Christmas tree, and the car start to shake, and Sarah tried to hit the brakes, but they wouldn't work, and she veered off the road and got into a terrible wreck. I woke up gasping, and both of our alarms were going off. I felt fear jangling through my body, and I had a very clear message for her that seemed to come from the dream and not my brain. Sarah, you have to get your car checked out. You can't drive more than a mile. So go to the place next to the school on Williamson Road. Your brakes are almost gone and they won't make it any further than that. What are you talking about? She said, sitting up in bed and rubbing her eyes. Listen, I know it's weird, but I get messages in my dreams sometimes, and I just had one, and I just know you'll get in an accident if you don't take care of this today, right now. Trust me." Sarah looked at me in silence for a little while. I thought for sure I had scared her off. I hadn't explained my fortune telling or anything about myself that would give this more context. Witchy behavior wasn't that cool or trendy back in 2004 like it is now. I was bullied for being different as a kid, and I was worried that my new friend would think I was spooky too. But then she nodded her head and said, "Okay, if it'll make you feel better, I'll do it right now." "Oh, thank you," I said. "It would make me feel better." So she left right away and brought Back to the Future to the nearest auto shop. Later that morning, I ran into Sarah in the hallway of the English building. "You were right," she yelled, raising her arms and clenching her hands into celebratory fists. Everyone in the hallway turned to see what the commotion was about. "My brakes were just about to go. The guy at the shop said it was a miracle I made it there in one piece. Damn, you're good." After that, Sarah told the story to all of her friends, and news of my intuition spread far and wide. It ended up being great for my little fortune-telling side hustle, and she was my biggest supporter. I was just glad that she and Back to the Future were safe and sound. Thank you.
Yay, I love that. Saving lives. So I'm Paulina. I am the co-author of Secrets of Romani Fortune Telling, and I'm going to read a section titled Paulina's Skepticism. And it's supposed to help people kind of navigate through skeptic clients or situations where people are skeptics. So I like to tell skeptical clients that I'm a skeptic too. When discussing my belief in divination, I often draw parallels to my religious upbringing in Catholicism and how my perspective has over time now shifted from being religious to being spiritual. Some days the notion of a higher power and all texts in the Bible resonated deeply, while on other days I couldn't even wrap my head around it. I realized that I was struggling with Catholicism as a doctrine, and that made me doubt my faith in everything. Despite my many efforts to renounce my belief in God, though, I just couldn't shake the feeling there was something bigger than me and us as humans out there. That's when I realized that I could just believe in what felt true to me and remain skeptical about everything else. I'm not Catholic anymore, but I do believe in a higher power, but in a way that's personal to me. Finding a balance became my answer, steering clear of doctrinal extremes. My relationship with my God has never been better. Similar to the fluctuations I experience in my religious convictions, my outlook on fortune telling has had an ebb and flow over the years. I found harmony in my healthy skepticism, and it's become part of my approach to fortune telling. It makes me more grounded. It makes me a more grounded reader if I take everything with a grain of salt and acknowledge my faith and acknowledge my human fallibility. Telling my skeptical clients that I know and agree that divination isn't a perfect science helps them trust me more. I'm not going to pretend that I know everything, but I do believe in what I do, and believing in divination and how it can work is personal, like my belief in God. I encourage them to enjoy the ride, and that usually softens their reservations. Transparency is key, and this is a lesson I've gleaned from lived experience. I tell my clients that what unfolds during a fortune telling session isn't set in stone. My guiding influences in the divinatory arts impressed upon me that fortune telling is an exploration of the highest probability. It allows for flexibility and for the client to alter their path by changing their perspective and making decisions. My ancestors literally believe it was invented to be used as a tool to warn against or change the future. In essence, fortune telling at its best encourages adaptability and a nuanced understanding of the intricate web of life. In fortune telling business, it's reasonable to wonder whether admitting doubts about your own craft or spiritual path could make you seem less credible. But the skeptic is not having doubts about something tried, trusted, and tested, like the work of a shoe cobbler or a pilot. Fortune telling isn't a science and it isn't brain surgery, so they don't need to treat it so seriously. When you're open about your struggles or doubts, it builds trust with people. They see you as genuine, not just someone trying to look perfect. It makes the whole experience more authentic and connects you with clients on a deeper level. It brings the human element back into it. So, in the world of fortune telling, being honest about your own journey can be a key to building strong, meaningful relationships with those seeking guidance. Remember, just because you are being honest, you still need to remain confident, calm, and professional.
Wow. I'm so excited about this book coming out because I've already heard the like the little snippets that you've had out, and some of the there was like a written preview too, and every time I hear more of it I get more excited. So I am ready. I am ready for this to come out. Thank you guys so much for coming on and for sharing that with
Oh,
us.
thank you. We really appreciate it.
Um, so is the target audience for the book people who might want to use these arts in their own personal practice or in a practice where they're helping working with clients?
Definitely both. Because Roma fortune telling is a job. It's not something that we just do for fun. The kinds of inner work that we do is sometimes rooted in other practices, but tarot, palmistry, especially are a job. I don't know, my family would read tea leaves more communally, or like for fun, for each other. But that's also considered practice for working your trade. And a lot of folks, if they already have a practice, they don't realize that it's rooted in Romani culture, and so they should probably learn that. And if they're interested in learning, this is also meant to be an accessible tool to introduce you to those things. Is there anything you would add to that, Paulina?
I really do like your answer. I feel like our book target market is literally so many people, and it's actually a hard question to answer because I feel like it's even people that are just interested in our culture in general will learn so much about, we'll learn so much about it, like just from our fortune telling book, because it just has a lot to do with, our roots, and I feel like history, and definitely obviously people that are interested in fortune telling. Um but yeah, it's pretty versatile for sure.
Excellent. Well, this may be a book that creates some positive mayhem in people's lives by changing how they look at some things. So that makes me curious about what book has created the most mayhem in you all's lives.
So I think the book that has created the most mayhem in my life is an anthology called Roads of the Roma, a pen anthology of gypsy writers, because I wanted to go to grad school to be a professional writer, and I was in my mid 20s. And I didn't know that Roma wrote literature. I had never read anything that Roma wrote. No one had ever mentioned it to me. And as I was getting ready to work on my application to go to school, and they're asking who your influences are, and I was like, I wonder if any Roma ever write. Like my grandmother and my mother, left school early, and I always got the sense that like education wasn't for us. That was like a message that I got, even though I was, went through school and everything. And so I did a little search and I found that book, and there weren't many out there at the time. There is a new anthology of Romani writers that both Paulina and I are in called Kin, Kin. And so keep an eye out for that. It's coming out the September 27th, I think. Edited by Rain Gagan and Fiona Bolger, and it's out with Salmon Poetry. But basically, I read Roads of the Roma when I was applying to go to grad school, and it completely changed my life. There not only has there been a Roma writer, there have been a lot of Romani writers, and I met so many of them through that work, and so much of that work was really hard and resilient and dealt with themes of genocide and all these things that my family talked about, but also wouldn't talk about. And also dealt with Romani joy and a celebration of our people and our roots in India, all these things that I just really wasn't exposed to conversation about. And then that really made me feel like I could maybe present myself as a Romani writer, because I had grown up for a really long time feeling like I needed to keep my identity a secret, like a lot of Romani people do, and just not talk about being Roma. And still for the first year or two, or I'd say year of grad school, I didn't talk about it. And one of my professors, Robert Olin Butler, called out my first story for being inauthentic. And because I'm a little shit, I was like, well, I'm gonna write about being Roma, and then he'll be like, this is inauthentic. And I'll be like, you're wrong. It's actually the most authentic thing I've ever written. You don't know shit. And then I wrote it, and he was like, this is the first authentic thing you've ever written. I was like, damn.
Did you get yearning?
I did get yearning. That was the story with yearning, which was the standard for him. Either it had yearning or it didn't. And yeah, and then he was kind of interested in working with me and mentoring me. And so that really changed my life, because I also had not considered myself a fiction writer until that point. And I realized that I love writing poetry, but poetry was also a way for me to say less and hide more. And fiction made me say a lot more, which I really appreciate. So I write fiction, nonfiction, and poetry, but then started really describing myself as a writer of Romani heritage, but also actually writing about being Roma. And I had resolutely not been doing that for years before, even though I was considering a career in writing. So it totally changed things for me.
And how did that change? How did that change make you feel?
Um, Partially terrified, because it was all of the things that I wasn't supposed to be doing. I mean, my grandmother was like, don't tell anyone. And my mother was like, don't bother with college. No one will ever take you seriously anyway. And like, no one was really in support of what I was doing. Except, friends who were like, oh, you should write about this. Um, and my grandma never really quite got why I wanted to be public with things, but I think she always loved me and cared about me and wanted me to be well and happy. um and so it was scary, but it was also felt more authentic, because I think ever since I was a kid I was writing to process trauma and all kinds of things that were heavy and difficult and make sense of them. And it was um almost dissociative not to write about my identity. And so it really helped me start to process that too, because if you are Roma and you're telling everyone around you you're not all the time, it's a strange experience. And it let me release some of the shame I didn't realize I felt. I thought I just had a secret, but actually I did feel shame about it. And that's not something I want to feel ashamed of, because there's no shame in being Romani. But also the shame of being mixed, because I felt like, am I Roma enough to write about this? Like, am I Gypsy enough? And it kind of helped me also find that being mixed and growing up assimilated and all of the things that I experienced were things that people experience. And that's just my perspective.
Mhm. I forgot I wasn't on mute. I was like,
Um, Paulina, is what book has created the most mayhem in your life?
um, what's crazy is that I haven't read a lot of books. I mean, by Roma, I'd read Rowena's book, Rowena Marin's book, Who Am I in the World? Is that the name of it? Who Am I in the World? I mean, that was pretty amazing for me. I want to say, like, what created the most mayhem in my life. I don't know why, but All About Love by Bell Hooks. Have you guys ever heard of that?
Yes, 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 yes. That's such a good book.
I don't know why. It's just one of those books, like, I think about it almost every day, and I feel like that's probably why. And it just talks about, love being a true, like, choice and act of service. So, like, in every action, whether it's my pets or my kids or, my partner, I feel like no matter what we're going through, like I have to show my love or whatever it is, and especially like writing this book too. Like we've had so many difficult days in writing it and hours and feelings too. I mean, even right now, I feel, there's a name for it, like imposter syndrome. Like, how am I even here at this moment? And I was telling Jess that before. I was like, I think I girl boss too hard into this. I don't know what position this is, but it's not what I signed up for. Or no, it is, but sometimes it's like am I even cut out for all of this? I feel the same way, like I'm, communicating in ways that I never thought I would have to before, and answer questions I never thought I'd have to answer. And so, yeah, but definitely all about love. I love how it talks about rage, and it's just such an important daily life changer for me. I love bell hooks and her philosophy on life as well.
And how long ago did you come in contact with, like, how long ago did you read it first?
Only like 2 years ago. So yeah, like only a couple years ago, I read that book. I was going through a really difficult time, and it was the weirdest thing. I was in this thing for LA. Like in LA, there's just always these weird group meetings somewhere, and they put you up, like you sign up for this thing. Like you sign up for this, I forgot the name of the company. I think it's called 222 or something. And what they do is like they put you in this place, like you answer a bunch of questions, and it's just like a meeting people and new experiences, but it's a surprise. So you don't know where you're going until the day of. So I ended up meeting these people at this interesting restaurant, this group of people, and then we like all listen to jazz like after. And someone was just talking about asking questions about everyone's different point of view on love and what love means to them. And then um yeah, like someone just recommended reading that book. I went home, I read it, I bought it, I read it, and yeah, it changed me.
Very cool. I have to say that when you're describing, like, meeting up with a bunch of people that you don't know and you don't really know what, like, I felt terrified just hearing about that's like sort of my nightmare, being social and not knowing what's going on. So, kudos to you for for going out and doing that kind of thing.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really fun. It's so when you're alone, I feel like I'm so like, am I ever even gonna see these people again? And so that's kind of my attitude on it.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
So, some of this also brings up a question that I have for you all, and whoever wants to answer first can answer. Um, but what advice would you have for a younger version of yourself?
You can go first.
I would love to tell my little 21-year-old self not to get married. I actually, on my way, because I was still in school in college, I was in my senior year, and I went to classes that day, and I was on campus, and I had a scheduled marriage at the courthouse like in the afternoon, but I was so nervous that I went decided to go to my morning classes at first before I got married. And I was like, "Ah, I need a sign. I need a sign from my ancestors, from God, from all the deities, Sarala Kali. Like I need a sign. Should I do this or not?" And I had my eyes closed and I was standing on the campus. And then I opened my eyes and a lady walked by with a t-shirt that had a bride and groom on it and it said big mistake. And I was like, but I booked the courthouse. And I'd have to like tell them no. I don't know if I can do that. And I would just love to tell my little 21-year-old self, it is okay if someone has to go back to Ireland and not get married to you. If it is in your heart not to do something, whether it is marriage or whatever, it's okay not to do it. You don't have to do things you don't want to do.
Well, and that brings up a question, um, that I mean, that was a pretty clear sign,
It was
right?
the
Like,
fucking clearest sign ever, and I was like, couldn't possibly.
so you kind of talked yourself out of seeing it as
Oh
a
yeah.
sign?
I
Okay.
got married to be polite.
Wow.
No, because I feel like that's so like feminine. You know what I mean? Like
I was
that's
like,
so feminine of you. Because why do we do shit like that? Oh,
it was
sorry, am I not
horrible.
supposed to say that?
Oh yeah, you can language is completely fine. Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's definitely we were raised to be polite in ways that are not helpful for us.
No, not at all.
Yeah. So that's my advice to my younger self. And I feel like you can extrapolate, don't get married if you don't want to any kind of don't do something if you don't want to. Universal.
Yeah. Yeah, learning to trust our instincts and our own signs. It's a hard lesson, but
It is.
yeah.
Yeah. Also listen to signs. Oh my God, that was the clearest sign I could ever want. Like it was like a billboard.
Yeah.
Listen to my intuition.
Yeah. So, Paulina, how about you? What would you tell your younger self?
Um, this question is so difficult because there's so much advice that I would love to give to my younger self. I think that when Jess said you don't have to do something that you don't want to do, I feel like that's so important. Like if it makes you uncomfortable, just don't move forward with it. Like do what you can. I had an arranged marriage, and so that was something, it was arranged. I would say it wasn't completely forced. I would say it was guilted for sure. I also got married to be polite as well. But I think I wouldn't exactly change that because of the way my life turned out maybe right now, but at the same time I feel like I could have stood up for myself more. Like don't let yourself get walked all over. And I had to get walked all over on so many times to come to that conclusion where now it's like I feel like I deserve the best from day one. So anybody that's in my life is really positive. Not that like you have to be like benefiting from anyone or anything like that, but like anyone that's in my life is there because I want them to be there and because I enjoy their company. And so that's kind of how that's my advice to anybody, especially younger people.
Yeah. And um there's a there's a podcast that's about your experience leaving that marriage, right?
Yes, so there's a podcast called Foretold with the LA Times hosted by Faith Pino, and it talks about that journey and also some history. It doesn't speak for all Roma, but it's a little look into my past.
It's such a good podcast. I highly recommend. Even though I know Paulina, I couldn't stop listening to it. And I just met someone today, or actually a couple days ago, um, who was asking about what I do for work. And I was like, oh, I'm a fortune teller, but in my Romani family tradition. She was like, I just listened to Foretold. I'm like, Paulina is my co-host for Romanistan podcast. And we debriefed a lot of the full Foretold episodes on our podcast, Romanistan, which is basically a celebration of Romani writer, or not Romani writers, but Romani people of all walks of life. But we also have a lot of writers on there. Um, yeah, so it's really cool if people are interested to listen. And then it was great that I'm glad that we gave you an opportunity to debrief because it must have been wild having episodes about your own life coming out edited.
God, I was there. I was in town. We were in New York. We were in New Jersey when episodes were coming out, and I was like super panicked. I don't know what it is, but again, I think I'm just like accepting the experience. Like I don't know how I got here, but I'm here.
I'll put links down in the description below for folks who wanna check that out, to check that podcast out. Um, Speaking of not knowing how you got here, but being here, so what advice do you think if an earlier version of yourself somehow appeared to you now, what advice do you think that they would have for you?
Oh God, this question. Oh my God, that's like like my heart is going into my stomach. So definitely enjoy every moment, probably. Like just take it all in, breathe, enjoy every moment, and be present as possible, because life is truly such a freaking gift, and I can't express that any harder. So yeah, what about you, Jess?
I was gonna say something very similar because I think my younger self would be impressed and surprised that I am doing this podcast with you, that I wrote this book with you, that I'm like making a living doing work that I care about. And yeah, and I think my younger self would be like, can you just be proud of yourself for a second? Like just just enjoy that for like a minute because I think I can be very well, according to palmistry, I'm dominant in fire, and people with a lot of fire are known for constantly always looking forward and not really appreciating when they achieve something and just looking for the next goal and having very high standards for themselves. And I yeah, I was joking earlier with you, Jen, saying that I got my box of books today and I couldn't open it until I got on this podcast because I wanted to read from it because I wanted to throw up. I was so nervous and I was like only seeing it as like, well, it's probably full of my failures. And it's just like my younger self would be like, "Oh my God, you wrote a fucking book. I'm so proud of you."
I'm retracting our names. It's anonymous.
Yeah, I was like, can we take my name off of it? It's like, what am I talking about? Like, just, oh my God, just enjoy this.
Mhm.
Yeah. And that's one of those things that is so it's it's so much easier said than done. Like, because we hear that a lot, right? Enjoy every moment and those kind of things. So do y'all have any tips either from your younger self or from yourself now for other people or yourself, like how does one accomplish that? That's so funny. I use the word accomplish. It's not really something that you accomplish, right? Like how do you not accomplish? I don't know. Like how do you enjoy the world as there?
I have a kind of funny answer. So I have been doing EMDR, like to process trauma for a long time. Yay, EMDR. And I had such a busy week last week, and it was a shorter session than usual, and I didn't want to get into like gnarly childhood stuff. And I was telling my therapist, like, my brain is ping-ponging around. I just really wish that I could just absorb that this is all good. Like, I'm busy with good stuff. This is good stress. And she was like, "Oh, let's do some sessions on just feeling proud of yourself and feeling like you appreciate yourself and that you've accomplished these things." And so I literally did an EMDR session to like help me feel like be present and process the emotions of feeling proud of myself. And that was helpful. So I recommend therapy if that is something that you struggle with in a way that you're like, this doesn't feel normal. This is causing me pain. Um, but in terms of like things that I do for myself in the moment, I today I didn't do this until we were literally talking about it, but I think I would tell myself of 8 hours ago, like, hold the box of books and just say, you wrote a book, like with one of your best friends that you're really proud of. This is cool. Like, say this is cool and just sort of kind of make yourself do it, like fake it.
I like
What do
it.
you do, Paulina?
Oh my God, when you said therapy, I was like, I could not express also how much therapy has really helped me throughout everything, like therapy, life coaches. I view things now. I don't know what it is with my brain. Maybe I'll like rewire and change in 10 years, but I'm very like business logical oriented, and I view it as like outsourcing. And so I'm like, I can't do everything on my own. And I feel like I don't want to give people in my life, I don't want them to have that role to like take on every role in my life as well. So I feel like um just therapy, mental health advocacy, like all of that has helped me grow as a person. Meditation is huge. I think just breathing, meditation, like doing, what feels true to yourself, like that all helps me stay focused. I have to like delete TikTok. I have to delete distractions because I feel like I really feel disconnected when I'm truly connected to the internet. And that is some advice. Yeah, like stay present by just like pondering, you know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah, I know. I
Yeah,
know what you mean.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much connection online that it actually disconnects us from ourselves.
Totally.
Yeah. Um, so my one of my counselors and I joke about my EMDR sessions that every time the target is like trying to EMDR my way out of the patriarchy. Like that's the that's sort of the going joke. I'm also I love EMDR. I had a
So
session earlier
helpful.
this week. Um and it took me the entire session just to figure out like what my target memory was because it was like something where there were just a million different things involved in it. Um anyway, I could talk about
Yeah.
EMDR for a long time.
It's amazing. It's basically brain magic and it's exhausting, but it's so helpful.
And one of the things I love is that like so there's a bunch of different ways that for folks who don't know, there's a bunch of different ways you can do EMDR. I do the auditory where there's beeping going from
Oh.
side to side. Um and so I just close my eyes and just, vibe with the beeps and I feel like my brain is writing a poem. Like it's just
Mm,
like, showing me all the different images and it's making sense on its own. Um And then a few days later, I feel better.
yeah, it's pretty cool. I do the little light dots that go back and forth on the screen. Bonk, bonk.
Like a little disco going on.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you both so much for coming on. I can always tell like if I'm starting to get into where I'm just gonna like singing the praises of EMDR, that probably means we're at about time. So thank you both so much for coming in today. I've enjoyed talking with you immensely.
Oh, this was such a pleasure and so nice to see you again. And yeah, thank you so much for having us on.
Thank you. We really appreciate it. And I had a great time.
Yeah, this is fun.
Wow, what a great interview that was. I hope you had as much fun listening as I had talking. And I had the good fortune to a few years ago do an online class with Jezmina, and I think I got a really good story out of that. So I will highly recommend that if you can take one of their writing classes, definitely take one of their writing classes. I had a great time writing the story I wrote and it was fun. I think the prompt was something like sort of using family mystical traditions to write fiction. So it was fun. I also highly recommend Jasmina's Patreon as well. And they do this dream club where people can come and talk about their dreams and get different inputs about the symbolism or the messages that may be coming from their dreams. Every month I think I should go to that and then I don't go. Maybe I should go. After hearing that chapter read, maybe that's my sign that I should start going. I will also, I think I said this during the actual interview, but I'm going to say it again, that down in the description, there's going to be a link to the Foretold podcast that talks about Paulina's story of leaving her marriage and community and finding her own sense of self and her way in the world. So that there will be a link down there to that as well. So much more for you all to get into, right? Uh So your TBR list has grown because talked about a lot of great books during the interview. And TBL, TBD, to be done. I don't know. I guess that's just a to-do list, isn't it? That's just a to-do list. I'm trying to make it more complicated than it is. It's just a to-do list. Thanks for stopping by.